Please, he's going to sell me tonight." The little black girl slammed into Bear's chest, her bloody fingers clawing at his leather vest. Her eyes were wild, animal terror. "They're coming for me. Men with money, my stepfather, he's giving me to them." Bear grabbed her shoulders. Blood smeared across his hands. This child had run barefoot through the forest thorns, shredding her skin just to escape. "Where is he?" Bear growled. "Behind me. He's coming. Please, please." Branches cracked in the woods. A man's voice echoed through the trees. "Maya, get back here, you little bitch." Bear's blood turned to ice. Before we continue, subscribe and follow this story to the end. Comment your city. I want to see how far Maya's story travels. Maya's lungs burned like fire. Her bare feet slammed against rocks, roots, and thorns. Blood smeared across her heels. Branches whipped her face, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Behind her, somewhere in those woods, Rick was coming. "God, please," she whispered between ragged breaths. "Please let someone hear me." She had been running for what felt like hours. Maybe it was only minutes. Time had lost all meaning the moment she heard Rick's voice through the truck window, calm and cold. "I brought what you asked for." Those 6 words had shattered everything. Maya was 10 years old. She understood more than adults thought she did. She understood that something valuable meant her. She understood that "they'll pay good money" meant she was being sold. And she understood that if she stayed in that truck, she would never see daylight again. So she ran. Now her body screamed for rest. Her vision blurred with tears. The forest seemed endless, a maze of shadows and twisted branches designed to swallow little girls whole. Then she heard it. Engines. Loud, rumbling, powerful engines. Maya's heart leaped into her throat. She changed direction, crashing through the underbrush toward that sound. It grew louder. Closer, the roar of motorcycles on asphalt. "Help!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "Somebody help me!" She burst through the tree line and stumbled onto the road. 6 motorcycles. 6 massive men in black leather vests, chrome glinting in the afternoon sun. The words "Hell's Angels" emblazoned across their backs. Maya had heard stories about bikers. Her mother had warned her to stay away from them. "Dangerous men," she'd said. "Troublemakers." But right now, these dangerous men were her only hope. "Please," Maya collapsed to her knees, gravel biting into her skin. "Someone help me." Bear saw the girl before anyone else. His hand shot up the universal signal to stop. Behind him, 5 engines died to silence almost simultaneously. 30 years of riding together had made them move like one organism. But nothing in those 30 years had prepared him for this. A child. A little black girl, maybe 10 years old, stumbling out of the forest like she'd crawled through hell itself. Her feet were bare and bloody. Her braids were tangled with leaves. Her shirt was torn. And her eyes. Bear had seen fear before. He'd seen it in bar fights, in back alleys, in situations that would make ordinary men run. But this was different. This was the kind of fear that came from something far worse than fists or knives. This was the fear of a hunted animal. He was off his bike before the engine fully stopped. Hey, he said, dropping to one knee beside her. His voice came out softer than most people knew he was capable of. "You're all right now. You're safe." The girl grabbed his arm with both hands. Her grip was surprisingly strong for someone so small. Like she was afraid that if she let go, she would drown. "My stepfather," she choked out. "He's selling me. Please don't let him take me back." Bear felt something inside him go very, very still. Behind him, the other bikers had dismounted. Tank, all 6'5" of him with a shaved head and tattoos crawling up his neck. Ruckus the youngest with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Stone whose face rarely showed emotion, but whose fists spoke volumes. Ace the quiet one, who could hotwire any vehicle in under 60 seconds. And Rust the oldest after Bear, whose gray beard couldn't hide the danger in his eyes. They formed a loose semicircle around the girl. Not threatening, protective. "Kid," Bear said slowly. "What's your name?" "Maya." "Okay, Maya. I need you to tell me exactly what happened." Maya's whole body shook, but she nodded. "My mama died last year. After that, Rick, my stepdad, he changed. He started drinking, started hitting me when nobody was looking, started bringing men to the house. Bad men." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Last night I heard him on the phone. He said he had something valuable to sell. Something young. Something they'd pay good money for." Ruckus made a sound low in his throat, like a growl. "This morning," Maya continued, "he told me to get in the truck. Said we were going for a drive, but he wouldn't look at me. He drove us deep into the woods and stopped. Told me to stay inside while he made a call." She looked up at Bear, her dark eyes swimming with tears. "I heard him say, 'I brought what you asked for.' That's when I knew. That's when I ran." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Bear felt 30 years of road-hardened cynicism crack down the middle. He had seen plenty of evil in his life. But this a man selling his own child. "Maya," he said, his voice rough. "Look at me." She did. "You're safe now. You hear me? Whatever happens next, we're not leaving you. Not today. Not ever." Tank was the first to speak. "We need to call the cops, Bear." "I know. And we need to get her somewhere safe. A hospital maybe. CPS." "I know that too." Stone cracked his knuckles. The sound echoed like gunshots. "What I want to know is where this Rick bastard is right now." Maya flinched at the name. Bear noticed. Of course he noticed. Bear noticed everything. "Easy," he murmured to Stone. Then to Maya, "Do you know where your stepfather is?" Before she could answer, Ruckus went rigid. "Bear." Something in his tone made everyone freeze. "We got movement. In the trees." Bear rose to his full height, positioning himself between Maya and the forest. The other bikers shifted instantly, forming a human wall of leather and muscle. Branches snapped. Leaves rustled. Heavy footsteps crashed through the underbrush. And then Rick emerged from the shadows. He was tall, lean, with a face that might have been handsome once before alcohol and bitterness carved it into something sharp and mean. His jeans were stained. His jacket was too clean for someone who'd been walking through the woods. But it was his eyes that Bear focused on. Cold. Calculating. The eyes of a man who had stopped seeing his stepdaughter as a human being a long time ago. "There you are, sweetheart," Rick said. His voice was smooth. Pleasant, even. Like honey poured over broken glass. "I've been looking all over for you." Maya whimpered. She pressed herself against Bear's leg so hard he could feel her trembling through the denim. Bear didn't move. "Stay right where you are," he said. Rick stopped. For the first time, he seemed to actually look at the men surrounding his stepdaughter. 6 bikers, Hell's Angels patches, arms covered in tattoos, faces that had seen violence and hadn't blinked. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Rick's face. But only a flicker. Now, he said, forcing a laugh. "Let's not make this into something it isn't. This is a family matter. The girl's confused. She does this, sometimes runs off, tells stories. You know how kids are." "No," Ruckus said flatly. "Family matters don't make kids run barefoot through the woods begging strangers for help." Rick's smile tightened. "She's dramatic. Gets it from her mother, God rest her soul. Look, I appreciate you gentlemen stopping to help, but I can take it from here. Come on, Maya. Let's go home. He took a step forward. Bear took a step to meet him. They stood face to face. Rick was tall, but Bear was taller. Rick was lean, but Bear was built like a mountain that had learned to walk. And where Rick's eyes held cold calculation, Bear's held something far more dangerous. Righteous fury. She's not going anywhere with you, Bear said quietly. Not now. Not ever. Rick's mask slipped. Just for a second. Underneath was something ugly. Something desperate. You don't understand, he hissed. I owe people money. Dangerous people. They said they'd kill me if I didn't pay. They offered to clear my debt if you just sold your 10-year-old stepdaughter. The words hung in the air like poison. Rick's face twisted. You don't get to judge me. You don't know what it's like. Those men don't play around. They would have killed me. So you decided to kill her instead. I wasn't going to kill her. They just I know exactly what they wanted. Bear's voice dropped so low it was almost inaudible. But every word carried the weight of a death sentence. And I know exactly what you are. A coward, a monster, a man who looked at a child who called you father and saw nothing but dollar signs. Rick sputtered. His composure cracked further. You can't keep her. She's mine. I have rights. You have nothing. Rust stepped forward, his weathered face hard as granite. The way I see it, you've got two choices, friend. You can walk away right now, turn yourself into the cops, and pray they go easy on you. Or, he let the word hang. Or what? Rick demanded. Stone cracked his knuckles again. Or you can find out why people cross the street when they see us coming. For a moment, Rick seemed to weigh his options. Maya held her breath. She could feel her heart pounding so hard it hurt. Every instinct screamed at her to run again, to hide, to disappear. But Bear's hand rested gently on her shoulder, warm and steady, and somehow that touch kept her anchored. Then Rick's eyes changed. The calculation returned. But underneath it was something else. Desperation. The wild look of a cornered animal. You're going to regret this, he said softly. All of you. You have no idea who you're messing with. Try us, Ruckus growled. Rick turned and bolted, not toward the road, toward the trees, back into the forest he'd emerged from. Bear cursed. Ruckus, why'd you let him run? He wasn't exactly asking for a group hug, Bear. He's going for his truck. Tank's words hit like cold water. Of course, Rick hadn't walked into these woods. He'd driven, and now he was running back to his vehicle, probably parked somewhere off the road. Maya, Bear said, kneeling quickly. We need to move, now. Is he coming back? Maybe, but we're not going to be here if he does. He lifted her effortlessly, carrying her to his motorcycle. The others were already mounting their bikes' engines, roaring back to life like awakening beasts. Hold on tight, Bear told her, settling Maya in front of him on the seat. Whatever happens, don't let go. Maya wrapped her arms around him and squeezed. They hadn't made it half a mile when Ace spotted the truck. It came crashing through the trees, parallel to the highway, bouncing over rough terrain, heading straight for the road ahead. Rick was behind the wheel, his face twisted with rage. He's trying to cut us off, Ace shouted. Bear revved his engine. Then we don't let him. The truck burst onto the asphalt 50 yards ahead, tires screeching as Rick jerked the wheel to block their path. Split, Bear commanded. The formation broke instantly. Tank and Stone veered left. Ruckus and Ace went right. Rust stuck close to Bear, flanking him as they accelerated straight toward the truck. Rick's eyes widened. He'd expected them to stop. To swerve. To do what normal people did when a 2-ton vehicle played chicken with them. But these weren't normal people. Bear aimed his bike at the narrow gap between the truck and the guardrail, a space maybe 4 feet wide, too small for a car, just barely enough for a motorcycle. "Hold on," he barked. Maya screamed as they shot through the gap metal, scraping metal sparks flying. The truck's side mirror exploded inches from Bear's shoulder. Then they were through. Clear road ahead. But Rick wasn't done. The truck reversed with a shriek of rubber, then lurched forward again, chasing them down the highway. Bear pushed his Harley to its limits, the engine screaming in protest. But the truck was faster on the straight road, its bumper closing the distance. 30 feet, 20, 10. "He's going to hit us," Maya cried. Bear made a decision. He braked. Hard. The motorcycle fishtailed violently. Maya screamed again, clinging to him with all her strength. For one heart-stopping moment, Bear wasn't sure they'd stay upright. But 30 years on 2 wheels hadn't been wasted. He controlled the skid, bringing the bike to a sideways stop, just as the truck shot past them, unable to slow in time. Rick's face flashed by a mask of fury and shock. Ruckus appeared from nowhere. He'd circled back while Bear drew Rick's attention. Now he rode alongside the truck's passenger window, a heavy chain in his hand. The chain swung. Glass exploded. Rick screamed, jerking the wheel instinctively. The truck swerved hard to the right, too hard. The guardrail came up fast. Metal shrieked against metal. The truck's front end crumpled. For one frozen moment, the vehicle balanced on 2 wheels, teetering on the edge of the ravine beyond. Then, gravity won. The truck disappeared over the edge with a roar of twisting steel and shattering glass. Maya watched it fall, watched it tumble, end over end, into the ravine below, watched it come to rest in a cloud of dust and smoke. Silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Bear's voice, rough and steady. "Maya, you okay?" She nodded against his back. She couldn't speak, couldn't find the words. The other bikers regrouped their engines, idling as they stared down into the ravine. The truck was a crumpled wreck. Smoke curled upward like a dying breath. "Is he—" Ace couldn't finish the question. Stone squinted at the wreckage. "Hard to say. That was a hell of a fall." "Should we check?" Bear was quiet for a long moment. His hand rested on Maya's arm, feeling her tremble. "Yeah," he finally said. "We check, and then we call the cops." Rick was alive. Barely. They found him 20 feet from the truck, thrown clear during one of the rolls. His leg was bent at a wrong angle. Blood covered half his face. He was conscious, but barely, his eyes unfocused and wandering. "Help me," he mumbled when he saw the bikers standing over him. "Please, help me." Bear stared down at him. This was the man who had looked at a 10-year-old girl and seen profit, who had driven his own stepdaughter into the woods to sell her to strangers, who had chased them down the highway, willing to kill them all to get her back. Bear had never wanted to hurt someone so badly in his entire life. "Call 911, he said quietly. Ruckus blinked. "You sure he's not worth it?" Bear turned away from Rick's broken body. "Let the law deal with him. Let him rot in prison for the rest of his miserable life. That's worse than anything we could do to him." Stone already had his phone out. Bear walked back to Maya. She was still sitting on his motorcycle, small and fragile, watching everything with wide eyes. "Is it over?" she whispered. Bear knelt beside her. "It's over, sweetheart. He's never going to hurt you again." Maya's face crumpled. All the fear, all the terror, all the adrenaline that had kept her going, it all came flooding out in a wave of tears. Bear held her while she cried. He didn't say anything. Didn't try to tell her it was okay. Because it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. A child had been betrayed by the one person who should have protected her. No words could fix that. But he could be there. So he was. The cops arrived 20 minutes later. 2 patrol cars and an ambulance, lights flashing, sirens cutting through the quiet of the forest road. Officers spilled out hands on holsters, eyes scanning the scene with professional suspicion. Bear understood. 6 bikers, a wrecked truck, an injured man, and a crying child. It didn't look good, but Maya spoke up before anyone could make assumptions. "They saved me," she said, her voice still shaky but clear. "Those bikers saved my life." She told them everything. She told them about her mother's death, about Rick's change, about the beatings and the strangers and the late-night phone calls. She told them about this morning, about the truck ride into the woods, about the words she'd heard through the window. "I brought what you asked for." By the time she finished, one of the officers, a woman with her hair pulled back in a severe bun, had tears in her eyes. "You're very brave, sweetheart," she said softly. Maya looked up at Bear. "I wasn't brave. I was scared. They were the brave ones." Bear's throat tightened. They loaded Rick into the ambulance. He was stable, the paramedics said. He'd survive. He'd face trial. And based on what Maya had told them, he'd face it alone. Child Protective Services was already on their way. A foster family had been contacted. Good people experienced with kids who'd been through trauma. But before any of that, before the social workers and the paperwork and the long road to recovery, something else needed to happen. Rust reached into his saddlebag. He pulled out a small leather bracelet. Simple worn, with a tiny metal emblem fastened to it. The Hells Angels symbol. A winged death's head. "Maya," Rust said, kneeling beside her. "We want you to have this." Her eyes widened. "What is it?" "Our colors. We don't give this to just anyone." He fastened it gently around her small wrist. "Think of it as a shield. Whenever you wear this, you remember there are people out here who've got your back. Always." Maya stared at the bracelet like it was made of gold. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. Bear put his hand on her shoulder. "You already did, kid. By trusting us. By being brave enough to ask for help." Maya looked up at him. Something shifted in her eyes. The fear was still there. It would be there for a long time, but underneath it was something new. Hope. She hugged Bear fiercely, her small arms wrapping around his neck with surprising strength. He hugged her back, careful and gentle, like she might break. "Thank you," she whispered into his shoulder. "Thank you for stopping. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing me." Bear's voice was rough when he answered. "Whenever you hear motorcycles on the road, you remember this. Not everyone rides past. Some of us stop. Some of us listen." He pulled back, meeting her eyes. "And some of us fight." The social worker arrived an hour later. A kind woman with gentle eyes and a soft voice, the kind of person who had chosen her profession because she genuinely wanted to help children. She explained to Maya what would happen next. The foster family, the interviews, the therapy sessions. It sounded overwhelming. But Maya held on to her bracelet, and when they asked if she wanted the bikers to stay while they processed everything, she nodded immediately. So they stayed. 6 Hells Angels standing guard outside a police car, watching over a little girl as she answered questions and signed forms and began the long process of rebuilding her life. Passers-by stared. A few crossed the street to avoid them. Old habits died hard. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the little girl inside that car. What mattered was the bracelet on her wrist. What mattered was the knowledge slowly growing inside her that she was not alone. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Maya was finally ready to go. The foster family's car arrived. A woman with warm brown eyes and a man with a gentle smile. They introduced themselves softly, gave Maya space, didn't push. Before she got in the car, Maya ran back to the bikers one last time. She hugged each of them. Tank, who towered over her like a mountain. Ruckus, whose sharp eyes had spotted Rick in the trees. Stone, whose fists had never felt more justified. Ace, who had circled back to help. Rust, who had given her the bracelet. And Bear, who had knelt beside her on that lonely road and promised she was safe. "Will I ever see you again?" Maya asked, her voice small. Bear smiled. It was a rare thing, that smile. Not many people had seen it. "You got our colors on your wrist, kid. That means you're family, and family always finds each other." Maya nodded. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Then she climbed into the foster family's car, clutching her bracelet, and watched through the window as 6 motorcycles rumbled to life. The engines roared. The bikers rode off into the sunset. And Maya, for the first time in as long as she could remember, smiled. The voice cut through the forest like a blade. "Maya, I know you're out there." Maya's entire body went rigid against Bear's chest. Her fingernails dug into his leather vest so hard he could feel them through the material. A whimper escaped her throat, small and broken, the sound of a child who had learned to fear the one person who should have protected her. Bear's hand came up to rest on her back. Steady. Protective. "He's here," Maya whispered. "Oh God, he's here." The other bikers moved without a word. Tank positioned himself to Bear's left. Stone took the right. Ruckus, Ace, and Rust spread out behind them, forming a wall of leather and muscle and barely contained rage. 6 men who had seen violence. 6 men who had lived through things that would break ordinary people. 6 men who had just silently agreed that this child would not be touched. Not today. Not ever. Branches snapped closer now. Heavy footsteps crashed through the underbrush. And then Rick emerged from the shadows and Maya stopped breathing entirely. He was exactly what Bear had expected. Tall, lean, with the kind of face that might have been handsome before bitterness and alcohol carved it into something mean. His eyes swept the scene, taking in the motorcycles, the bikers his stepdaughter pressed against a stranger's chest. For a split second, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or calculation. Then he smiled. "There you are, sweetheart." His voice dripped honey. "Sweet. Poisonous. You had me worried sick, running off like that." Maya shook her head violently. Her whole body trembled. "Don't," she choked. "Don't let him." "Shh." Bear's voice was low, meant only for her. "I've got you." Rick took a step forward, arms spread wide like a concerned parent. "Thank you, gentlemen, for finding her. She does this sometimes. Gets confused, tells stories. You know how kids are." Nobody moved. Nobody bought it for a second. "The girl stays with us," Bear said flatly. Rick's smile flickered. "Excuse me. You heard me? Now wait just a minute." Rick's voice hardened, the friendly facade cracking at the edges. "That's my daughter. You can't just stepdaughter." Tank's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "And from what she's told us, you lost the right to call yourself her anything." Rick's eyes narrowed. He looked at Tank, at Stone, at the other bikers, sizing them up. Calculating odds. "I don't know what she told you," he said slowly, "but she's lying. She does that. Her mother was the same way. Always making up stories, always playing the victim. Don't talk about my mama. Maya's voice was small, but fierce. She lifted her head from Bear's chest, tears streaming down her face, and stared at Rick with something that looked almost like defiance. Mama never lied. She was good. She was kind. And you— her voice cracked. You killed her. Maybe not with your hands, but you killed her. You made her so sad she stopped wanting to live. Rick's face contorted. Shut your mouth, girl. No. Maya's voice grew stronger. I heard you on the phone. I heard what you said. I brought what you asked for. You were going to sell me, your own daughter. I said, shut up! Rick lunged. It happened fast. 1 second he was standing 10 feet away, the next he was charging toward Maya with his hand raised, face twisted with fury. He didn't make it 3 steps. Ruckus moved like lightning. His fist connected with Rick's jaw, a clean, brutal strike that sent the man sprawling into the dirt. Rick hit the ground hard, gasping blood spraying from his split lip. You don't touch her, Ruckus spat. You don't even look at her. Rick scrambled backward, eyes wide with shock and rage. He touched his lip, stared at the blood on his fingers. You're dead, he hissed. All of you. You have no idea who you're messing with. The people I owe money to. They're not the kind of people you want to cross. They'll find you. They'll let them come. Stone cracked his knuckles. The sound echoed like gunshots. We'll be waiting. Rick staggered to his feet, swaying slightly. His eyes darted between the bikers, searching for weakness, finding none. This isn't over, he snarled. Then he turned and ran, not toward the road, into the forest, back the way he'd come. Bear watched him disappear into the shadows, his jaw tight. He's going for his truck, Ace said quietly. I know. We should go after him. No. Bear looked down at Maya, still clinging to him, still shaking. We get her out of here first. That's the priority. He lifted her easily, carrying her toward his motorcycle. The other bikers followed, mounting their bikes with practiced efficiency. Hold on tight, Bear told Maya as he settled her in front of him. Whatever happens, don't let go. Maya wrapped her arms around him and squeezed like her life depended on it. Because it did. The engines roared to life, a chorus of thunder that seemed to shake the very air. They pulled onto the highway, accelerating fast, putting distance between Maya and the monster who wanted to sell her. For 30 seconds, Bear allowed himself to hope they'd gotten away clean. Then Rust's voice crackled through the radio. Bear, we got a problem. Check your 6. Bear glanced in his mirror. His blood went cold. A truck had burst onto the highway behind them, tires screaming, engine roaring. Rick was behind the wheel, his face twisted into something barely human. He was coming for them. Hold on, Bear shouted. He pushed the throttle, the bike surging forward with a growl of pure power. Behind him, the other bikers matched his speed, forming a protective formation around him and Maya. But the truck was faster. On the straight highway, a 2-ton vehicle could outpace motorcycles. Rick knew it. He was closing the gap, foot pressed flat to the floor, determination burning in his eyes. He's gaining, Ace yelled. I can see that. Maya pressed her face against Bear's back. Her small body shook with sobs. She was trying desperately to hold back. I'm sorry, she whimpered. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. Don't you dare, Bear growled. None of this is your fault. You hear me? None of it. The truck was 50 feet behind them now. 40. 30. Bear could see Rick's face in his mirror. Wild. Desperate. The face of a man who had nothing left to lose. Bear, Tank's voice cut through the chaos. There's a curve ahead. Sharp one. If he tries to take it at this speed, I know. Bear had ridden this highway 100 times. He knew every curve, every straightaway, every pothole. The turn Tank was talking about was a 90-degree bend with a guardrail on one side and a steep ravine on the other. At normal speeds, it was manageable. At the speeds they were going, suicide. "Everyone split on my mark," Bear shouted into the radio. "Draw him in, then break formation. Make him choose. Copy that. Copy." The curve approached. 200 yards, 100, 50. Now. The bikers scattered like leaves in a hurricane. Tank and Stone veered hard left. Ruckus and Ace went right. Rust fell back ready to support wherever needed. Rick hesitated. His truck jerked left, then right, unable to decide which target to follow. In that moment of hesitation, he lost control. The curve came up too fast. Rick yanked the wheel, but it was too late. The truck's tires screamed against the asphalt, fighting for grip they couldn't find. The vehicle fishtailed violently, metal shrieking against the guardrail. And then it happened. The truck hit the guardrail at full speed. The front end crumpled like paper. The vehicle lifted onto two wheels, hung there for one eternal second, and then went over. Maya screamed. The truck tumbled down the ravine, rolling end over end, glass shattering metal, twisting. It hit the bottom with a sound that would haunt her dreams for years to come. Then silence. Bear brought his bike to a stop, chest heaving. The other bikers pulled up beside him, engines idling, everyone staring down into the ravine. The truck lay on its roof at the bottom wheels, still spinning slowly, smoke curling up from the wreckage. "Jesus Christ," Ace breathed. Maya was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Bear could feel every tremor against his back. "Is he dead?" she whispered. Bear didn't answer. He couldn't. He didn't know. "Stay here," he told her, dismounting carefully. "Don't move." He approached the edge of the ravine, the other bikers falling in beside him. Below the truck was barely recognizable as a vehicle. The cab was crushed, the windshield gone, debris scattered across the rocky slope. "Anyone see movement?" Tank asked. Nobody answered. Then Stone pointed. "There." 20 feet from the truck, a figure lay crumpled on the ground. Rick. He'd been thrown from the vehicle during the tumble, his body coming to rest against a boulder. He wasn't moving. "We should check," Rust said quietly. "Make sure." Bear nodded. "Tank, stay with Maya. Everyone else with me." They climbed down the slope, carefully loose rocks sliding beneath their boots. The smell of gasoline filled the air. Bear moved faster, knowing that a single spark could turn this whole ravine into an inferno. Rick lay on his back, eyes closed, blood covering half his face. His left leg was bent at an impossible angle. His chest rose and fell weakly. Alive. Barely. Bear stood over him, looking down at the man who had tried to sell his own stepdaughter. The man who had beaten her, terrorized her, made her run barefoot through the forest to escape. Every instinct screamed at Bear to finish it. One quick movement. Nobody would question it. The man had crashed his truck trying to run them down. A tragic accident. Nothing more. But then Bear thought about Maya, about her eyes, about her courage, about the way she'd trusted him, a stranger, because she had no one else. She didn't need more violence in her life. She needed justice, real justice, the kind that came with courtrooms and prison cells and the knowledge that the monster was locked away forever. "Call 911, Bear said. Ruckus blinked. "You sure he doesn't get to die easy? He gets to rot in a cell for the rest of his miserable life. That's worse than anything we could do to him." Stone already had his phone out. Bear climbed back up the slope, his knees aching, his heart heavy. Maya was still sitting on his motorcycle where he'd left her tank standing guard beside her. When she saw Bear approaching, her face crumpled. He's alive. Bear knelt beside her. But he's hurt bad. The cops are on their way. He's never going to hurt you again, Maya. I promise you that. Maya stared at him for a long moment. Then she threw herself into his arms, sobbing against his chest, her small body shaking with the release of fear she'd been holding back for so long. Bear held her. He didn't speak. Didn't try to tell her everything was okay. Because it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. But she was safe now. That was what mattered. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. "They're coming," Tank said. Bear nodded but didn't let go of Maya. The cops could wait. The questions could wait. Everything could wait. Right now, a little girl needed to know she wasn't alone. So he held her. And he waited. And he made a silent promise to whatever God might be listening that he would see this through to the end, no matter what it took. The first patrol car appeared around the bend, lights flashing, siren screaming. More followed. An ambulance. Another patrol car. Officers spilled out, hands on holsters, eyes scanning the scene. Bear knew what they saw. 6 bikers. A wrecked truck. A crying child. It looked bad. But Maya spoke before anyone could make assumptions. "They saved me." Her voice was hoarse but clear. "Those men saved my life." The officers exchanged glances. A woman with her hair pulled back stepped forward, her hand leaving her holster. "Sweetheart, can you tell me what happened?" Maya took a shaky breath. And then she told them everything. About her mother's death, about Rick's transformation, about the beatings she'd hidden under long sleeves, about the strangers who came to the house at night, about the phone calls she'd overheard, about the words that had shattered her world. "I brought what you asked for." By the time she finished, the officer was crying. "You're incredibly brave," she said softly. "Do you know that—" Maya looked at Bear. "I'm not brave. I was scared. They were the brave ones." The paramedics were bringing Rick up from the ravine now, strapped to a stretcher neck, immobilized. He was conscious, moaning in pain, his eyes rolling wildly. When he saw Maya, something ugly twisted across his face. "This isn't over," he slurred through bloody lips. "You hear me? This isn't over. Those men you owe, they'll come for you. They'll find you wherever you go. You can't escape them. You can't—" "Get him out of here," the female officer snapped. The paramedics wheeled him toward the ambulance. Rick kept shouting, his voice growing fainter with distance. "They'll find you, Maya. They'll find you." Maya pressed closer to Bear, trembling. "Is that true?" she whispered. "Will they come for me?" Bear's jaw tightened. He looked at the other bikers, saw the same grim determination reflected in their eyes. "Let them try," he said quietly. "Let them try." The ambulance doors slammed shut, cutting off Rick's shouts. The vehicle pulled away, lights flashing, carrying the monster toward whatever punishment awaited him. But his final words hung in the air like a curse. "They'll find you." Bear watched the ambulance disappear around the bend. Then he looked down at Maya, at the fear that had crept back into her eyes. Rick might be gone, but the threat remained. And somewhere out there, the men he owed money to were waiting. Men who had paid for a little girl. Men who wouldn't take kindly to losing their investment. This wasn't over. The police station smelled like stale coffee and desperation. Maya sat in a plastic chair, her legs dangling above the floor, a thin blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Bear stood beside her, refusing to leave, despite 3 different officers suggesting he wait outside. The other bikers had spread out through the lobby, their presence making the cops nervous. Good. Let them be nervous. A detective named Rodriguez approached a folder tucked under his arm, exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. He pulled up a chair and sat across from Maya, his movements slow and deliberate. "Maya, I need to ask you some more questions. Is that okay?" She nodded, clutching the blanket tighter. "Your stepfather mentioned some men he owed money to. Do you know anything about them?" Maya's face went pale. Her fingers twisted into the blanket fabric. "I don't know their names," she whispered. "But I saw them. They came to the house sometimes, late at night." "Can you describe them?" "One was big, really big, bigger than him." She pointed at Tank. He had a scar on his neck, like someone tried to cut his throat. Rodriguez's pen stopped moving. "And the other, skinny, wore nice clothes, talked like he was smart. He scared me the most." Maya's voice dropped even lower. "He looked at me once. Just looked. And I felt like he was deciding how much I was worth." Bear's hands curled into fists at his sides. Rodriguez exchanged a glance with another detective across the room. Something unspoken passed between them. "Maya, I'm going to be honest with you. We've been tracking a trafficking ring in this area for almost 2 years. They operate out of state lines, move kids through a network of..." He stopped, catching himself. "What I'm saying is you're not the first child these men have targeted, but you might be the first one who can help us stop them." "What do you mean?" "I mean we need you to tell us everything. Every detail, every face, every word you overheard. Can you do that?" Maya looked up at Bear. "Will you stay?" she asked. "I'm not going anywhere, kid." She turned back to Rodriguez and took a deep breath. "Okay, I'll tell you everything." For the next 2 hours, Maya talked. She talked about the strangers who visited Rick's house, about the hushed conversations she'd eavesdropped on through thin walls, about the phone calls that came at midnight and the envelopes of cash she'd seen Rick counting when he thought she was asleep. She talked about the night she'd woken up to find a man standing in her bedroom doorway just watching her, how she'd pretended to be asleep, heart pounding so hard she thought it would burst through her chest, how she'd heard him say to Rick, "She'll do. Have her ready by Sunday." Sunday. Today was Sunday. Bear felt sick. "They were coming for her today," he said, his voice rough. "If she hadn't run, we know." Rodriguez's jaw tightened. "We know exactly what would have happened." The room fell silent, heavy, suffocating. Then Rodriguez's radio crackled. "Detective, we need you in interview room B. Now." Rodriguez stood, his face grim. "Excuse me." He disappeared through a door, leaving Maya and the bikers alone with a uniformed officer who looked barely old enough to shave. Bear paced. Tank leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Stone stood by the window, watching the parking lot like he expected an army to materialize at any moment. Something was wrong. Bear could feel it in his bones. That radio call hadn't sounded routine. Rodriguez's face when he left hadn't looked routine. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then Rodriguez returned, and one look at his face told Bear everything he needed to know. "What happened?" Bear demanded. Rodriguez hesitated. His eyes flicked to Maya, then back to Bear. "Can we speak privately?" "No." Maya's voice was small but firm. "I want to know. Whatever it is, I want to know." Rodriguez exhaled slowly. He crouched down to Maya's level, his expression softer now, but no less troubled. "Your stepfather is talking. He made a deal. He's giving us names, locations, everything we need to bring down the whole operation." Maya's eyes widened. "That's good, right?" "It is. But there's a problem." Rodriguez paused. "The men he owes money to, they already know he crashed. They already know he's in custody, and they already know that the girl they paid for got away." Bear's blood turned to ice. "How?" "We don't know. Rick made one phone call before we got his phone. 30 seconds. Just enough to say the deal was off. Rodriguez's voice hardened. These people don't take losses well. They're going to want their money back, or they're going to want what they paid for. Maya made a sound. Small. Broken. Like an animal caught in a trap. They're coming for me, she whispered. They're coming. Bear moved before he could think. He knelt beside her, his massive hands gentle on her shoulders. Listen to me. Look at me, Maya. She looked. Those men. They're going to have to go through all 6 of us before they get anywhere near you. Do you understand 6 men? 6 motorcycles. 6 reasons they should turn around and run the other way. But they're dangerous. So are we. Bear's voice was granite. We didn't pull you out of those woods just to let someone else take you. That's not how this works. That's not who we are. Tank stepped forward. Bear's right. You're under Hell's Angels' protection now. That means something. That means a lot. Stone cracked his knuckles. Let them come. I've been itching for a good fight. Rust nodded slowly. We've faced worse odds. Ruckus grinned, though his eyes stayed hard. Way worse. Ace just gave Maya a thumbs up. For the first time since they'd entered the police station, Maya's trembling slowed. She looked at each of them one by one, as if trying to memorize their faces. Why? She asked quietly. Why do you care so much I'm nobody, just some kid you found on the road? Bear's throat tightened. You're not nobody, he said. You're Maya. You're the bravest kid I've ever met. And you're ours now, whether you like it or not. A tear slid down Maya's cheek, then another. But she was smiling. Rodriguez cleared his throat. Look, I appreciate the sentiment, but we need to get her somewhere safe. Real safe. CPS has a foster family lined up. But if these traffickers are as connected as Rick says, then a foster home isn't going to cut it. Bear finished. No, it's not. So what are you suggesting? Rodriguez hesitated again. He looked around the room at the bikers at their leather vests and tattoos and scarred knuckles. Everything about them screamed danger, but right now danger might be exactly what Maya needed. Off the record, Rodriguez said. Off the record. Keep her moving. Don't stay in one place too long. We're going to hit this trafficking ring hard and fast, but it's going to take time. Maybe a few days, maybe a week, until we round up everyone Rick named Maya is a target. You want us to hide her? I want you to protect her. Rodriguez's eyes locked with Bear's. You've already proven you're willing to do that. I'm asking you to keep doing it, just until we can guarantee her safety. Bear looked at the other bikers. No words were exchanged. None were needed. 30 years of riding together meant they could communicate with a glance. Tank nodded. Stone nodded. Ruckus nodded. Ace nodded. Rust nodded. Bear turned back to Rodriguez. We'll do it. But we do it our way. No GPS trackers, no check-ins. Ins. No cops following us around. We go dark until you tell us it's safe. Agreed. And when this is over, she gets a real home. A good one. Not some group house where she'll fall through the cracks. Rodriguez nodded slowly. I'll personally make sure of it. Bear extended his hand. Rodriguez shook it. One more thing, Bear said. The men who paid for her. The big one with the scar. The skinny one in nice clothes. When you find them, we'll find them. When you do, make sure they know. Make sure they know that she got away. That a bunch of bikers ruined their little shopping trip. Make sure they know that some kids aren't for sale. Rodriguez almost smiled. I'll pass along the message. They left the police station through the back entrance, Maya tucked between Bear and Tank like a precious cargo. The night air was cool. The parking lot empty except for their motorcycles and one unmarked car where Rodriguez watched them go. Bear lifted Maya onto his bike. She was wearing borrowed clothes, now clean ones, from a donation bin the cops kept for situations like this. Her old clothes had been taken as evidence. Her bloody footprints, her torn shirt, her terror catalogued and filed and stored in an evidence locker. "Where are we going?" Maya asked. "Somewhere safe," Bear said. "Somewhere nobody will think to look." He started the engine. The other bikes roared to life around him. They pulled out of the parking lot and onto the dark highway, 6 motorcycles cutting through the night like shadows with purpose. Behind them, the police station shrank into the distance. Ahead of them, the road stretched into darkness. And somewhere out there, men with money and evil intentions were planning their next move. But they didn't know about the bikers. They didn't know about the wall of leather and steel and righteous fury that stood between them and Maya. They would learn. They rode for hours. Bear took back roads, dirt paths, trails that didn't appear on any map. He doubled back twice, checking for headlights that might be following. There were none. Maya fell asleep somewhere around midnight, her small body slumped against Bear's back, her arms still wrapped around his waist. Even in sleep, she held on tight. They stopped at a safe house near dawn, an old cabin in the woods that belonged to a former member who'd died years ago. No electricity, no running water, no way for anyone to track them. Bear carried Maya inside and laid her on a cot in the corner. She stirred, but didn't wake. He pulled a dusty blanket over her and stood there for a long moment, watching her sleep. So small, so fragile, so damn brave. Tank appeared in the doorway. "Perimeter's clear. Ruckus and Ace are taking first watch." Bear nodded without turning around. "Bear." Tank's voice was quiet. "What happens when this is over? When the cops round up the bad guys and it's safe for her to come out? She gets a home, a real one. And us?" Bear finally looked at him. "What about us? We just go back to riding, pretend this never happened, pretend we didn't just—" Tank struggled for words. "This kid changed something, Bear. I don't know how to explain it, but something's different now." Bear looked back at Maya. "Yeah," he said softly. "I know." Maya woke up screaming. Bear was at her side in an instant, the other bikers scrambling for weapons that weren't there. "Hey, hey, hey!" Bear grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Maya, you're safe. You're safe. It's just a dream." Her eyes were wild, unseeing. She was still half asleep, still trapped in whatever nightmare had grabbed her. "They were here," she gasped. "They found me. They were taking me away. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I couldn't—" "Nobody's taking you anywhere." Bear's voice was firm, grounding. "Look at me. Look around. You're in a cabin. You're surrounded by 6 very large, very angry men who would rather die than let anyone hurt you. Do you see any bad guys?" Maya's breathing slowed, her eyes focused. "No," she whispered. "That's right. No bad guys. Just us. Just your people." "My people." Bear smiled. It was a rare thing, that smile. Not many people got to see it. "Yeah, kid. Your people." Maya threw her arms around his neck and held on like she was drowning. "I'm so tired of being scared," she whispered against his shoulder. "I'm so tired." I know you are." "Does it ever stop?" "The fear." Bear was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his own life, the things he'd seen, the things he'd done, the fear that had chased him through his 20s and into his 30s before he'd finally learned to face it. "It gets easier," he said finally. "It never goes away completely, but it gets easier. And you know what helps? What? Having people who've got your back. People who show up when things get hard. people who stand between you and the darkness. He pulled back, meeting her eyes. You've got those people now, Maya. For the first time in a long time, you're not alone. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. Any of you. When this is over, you're still going to be our people. That doesn't change. That never changes. Maya nodded, wiping her eyes. Promise? Promise. She was almost asleep again when Rust burst through the door. Bear, we've got company. Bear's blood went cold. How many? 2 vehicles, coming up the access road, headlights off. Bear was on his feet instantly. He scooped Maya off of the cot. Back door, now. They moved fast, silent years of instinct kicking in. Tank grabbed Maya's hand. Stone covered the rear. Ruckus and Ace were already outside, engines idling, ready to run. Bear pushed through the back door into the pre-dawn darkness. 2 motorcycles waited. Not enough for everyone. Tank, take Maya. Don't stop for anything. Bear, I'm not leaving you. That's an order. Bear's voice was iron. Get her out of here. We'll hold them off. Tank hesitated for one agonizing second. Then he lifted Maya onto his bike. Don't die, Tank said. Wasn't planning on it. Tank gunned the engine and disappeared into the trees. Maya's terrified face, the last thing Bear saw before the darkness swallowed them. Then he turned to face whatever was coming. Stone. Rust. Ruckus. Ace. 4 bikers against an unknown enemy. Well, Stone said, cracking his knuckles. This should be fun. The first vehicle came around the bend. Bear planted his feet and waited. The headlights cut through the darkness like predator eyes. Bear stood his ground, heart-pounding fists clenched. Behind him, Stone, Rust, Ruckus, and Ace formed a line. No weapons. No backup. Just 4 men and their fury. The first vehicle stopped 20 feet away. The second pulled up beside it. Doors opened. Men stepped out. 4 of them. 5. 6. Bear counted silently. Bad odds. Very bad odds. Then the passenger door of the lead vehicle opened and a man emerged who made Bear's stomach drop. Big. Massive. A scar running across his throat like someone had tried to cut his head off and failed. Maya's description. The man from her nightmares. Well, well, the scarred man said, his voice like gravel scraping concrete. Look what we have here. A bunch of bikers playing hero. Bear didn't flinch. You're on the wrong road, friend. Am I? The scarred man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Nothing about him seemed human. See, I'm looking for something. Something I paid good money for. Something that belongs to me now. Nothing here belongs to you. The girl does. Bear felt rage surge through his veins like fire. The girl belongs to herself. And she's not here. The scarred man laughed. It was an ugly sound, hollow and cruel. You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know you're stalling? He snapped his fingers. 2 of his men started moving toward the cabin. Search it. She's gone, Bear said. Your little investment drove off 5 minutes ago. By now she's miles away and you'll never find her. The scarred man's smile faltered. You're lying. Am I? Check the cabin. Check the whole damn forest. She's not here. The 2 men disappeared inside. Seconds later, one of them called out. He's right, Victor. Place is empty. Victor. So that was his name. Bear filed it away. Victor's face twisted with rage. He stepped closer to Bear, close enough that Bear could smell the cigarettes and violence on him. Where is she? Safe. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Victor stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed again, shaking his head. You know what I love about men like you? You think you're heroes. You think you're making a difference. He leaned in closer. But you're not. You're just delays. Speed bumps. The girl will be found. She'll be sold. And there's nothing you or anyone else can do to stop it. Bear's fist connected with Victor's face before anyone could react. The crack of bone echoed through the clearing. Victor stumbled backward, blood spraying from his nose. His men surged forward, but Bear was already moving. He grabbed Victor by the collar and drove his knee into the man's stomach. Victor doubled over, gasping. You listen to me, Bear growled into his ear. That little girl, she's under my protection. My brother's protection. You want her. You're going to have to kill every single one of us first, and even then you won't find her. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to get back in your car, drive away, and forget she ever existed. Because if you don't, if you come after her again, I will find you, and I will end you. He shoved Victor backward. Victor crashed into one of his men, barely staying upright. His face was a mask of blood and fury. Kill them, he snarled. Kill them all. The fight exploded. Stone took on two men at once, his fists like hammers, each blow landing with devastating precision. One man dropped with a broken jaw. The second took a knee to the ribs and crumpled. Rust moved like a man half his age, all instinct and experience. He ducked a punch countered with an elbow to the throat and sent his attacker sprawling. Ruckus fought dirty. Always had. He grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it into his opponent's eyes, then kicked the man's legs out from under him. Ace was smaller than the others, but faster. He dodged and weaved, landing quick strikes that accumulated into damage. Death by 1,000 cuts. And Bear. Bear was a force of nature. He waded through Victor's men like they were nothing, absorbing hits that would drop most men and answering with blows that shattered bones. Blood sprayed. Bodies, well, someone screamed, but there were too many. A fist caught Bear in the temple. His vision swam. Another blow to his ribs. He felt something crack. Rust went down, overwhelmed by two attackers. Ruckus took a kick to the knee and collapsed. They were losing. Victor watched from a safe distance, blood still dripping from his nose, a smile spreading across his ruined face. Enough, he called. His men stepped back, leaving the bikers bloody and battered on the ground. Bear tried to rise, but a boot planted itself on his chest, pinning him down. Victor walked over slowly, savoring the moment. You know what your problem is, he said, looking down at Bear. You care too much. About the girl. About your friends. About doing the right thing. He shook his head. Caring makes you weak. And weak men die. He pulled a gun from his waistband. Bear's heart stopped. Any last words? Bear looked up at him, blood dripping into his eyes, pain screaming through every nerve. Yeah, he gasped. Duck! Victor frowned. Then the roar of a motorcycle engine filled the air, and Tank came flying out of the darkness like a missile. His bike slammed into Victor at full speed. The impact was sickening. Victor flew through the air, ragdolling across the dirt. The gun clattered away into the shadows. Tank was off the bike before it even stopped moving, charging into the chaos like a one-man army. Miss me, he shouted. Bear laughed despite the pain. With Tank's arrival, the tide turned. The remaining men panicked, caught between injured bikers finding their second wind and a fresh attacker with nothing to lose. One by one they fell. The last man standing made a run for the vehicles. Stone caught him by the collar and slammed him face first into a tree. Silence. Bear pushed himself up onto his elbows, every muscle screaming in protest. Around him his brothers were battered but alive, bloodied but unbroken. Tank, Bear wheezed. Where's Maya? Safe. Dropped her at the secondary location before I doubled back. Tank grinned through a split lip. You really think I'd leave you idiots to have all the fun? Bear let his head fall back against the dirt. You're a beautiful man, Tank. Don't get weird. They found Victor 20 feet from where Tank's bike had hit him. He was still alive, barely his body twisted at wrong angles, his breathing shallow and wet. Bear stood over him. The girl, Victor rasped. You think this ends here? There are others, more powerful than me. They'll never stop. Names, Bear said. Give me names. Victor laughed, blood bubbling on his lips. Go to hell. You first. Victor's eyes went glassy. His breathing stopped. Bear stared at the body for a long moment. Then he turned away. Let's go. They rode to the secondary location as the sun rose. It was another safe house, this one better hidden than the first. A converted barn on property owned by a sympathetic farmer who'd owed the club a favor for 20 years. Maya was waiting outside when they pulled up. The moment she saw Bear, she sprinted toward him. He barely had time to dismount before she crashed into his chest, arms wrapping around him so tight it hurt his cracked ribs. He didn't care. You came back, she sobbed. You came back. Of course I did. Bear held her gently, mindful of his injuries. I told you. You're our people now. Maya pulled back, her eyes widening as she took in the blood, the bruises, the damage. You're hurt. You're all hurt. We've had worse, Tank said, though he was clearly lying. What happened? Who were those men? Bear hesitated. Maya deserved the truth. She'd earned it. The men your stepfather owed money to, they came looking for you. Maya's face went white. They found us. They found us. But they didn't find you. Bear's voice hardened with satisfaction. And they never will. The one in charge, the big one with the scar, he's gone. He's never hurting anyone again. Maya stared at him. You killed him. He made his choice. She was quiet for a long moment. Bear watched her, waiting for the fear, the judgment, the recoil that came when children learned what adults were capable of. Instead, she hugged him again. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for protecting me. Bear's eyes burned. Always, kid. Always. They spent the next 2 days at the barn. Rodriguez called twice. The raids were happening. Rick's information was paying off. Arrests were being made across 3 states. The trafficking ring was crumbling. But there were still loose ends, still names they hadn't found, still danger lurking in the shadows. On the 3rd morning, Rodriguez called with different news. It's done, he said. We got them all. Every name Rick gave us, every connection, every safe house. The whole operation is toast. Bear closed his eyes. She's safe. She's safe. Bring her in. There's a foster family waiting. Good people. Vetted 6 ways from Sunday. She'll be okay, Bear. She'll be okay. Bear hung up the phone. He found Maya sitting on a hay bale, braiding strands of straw together, like she used to braid her mother's hair. She looked up when he approached. It's over, isn't it? It's over. Maya nodded slowly. She didn't cry. She'd done enough crying for a lifetime. What happens now? Now you get a real home, a real family, people who will take care of you the way you deserve. What about you? What about all of you? Bear sat down beside her. We go back to the road. That's what we do. That's who we are. Will I ever see you again? Bear reached into his vest pocket. He pulled out a small leather bracelet, worn and weathered, with a tiny metal emblem fastened to it. The Hell's Angel symbol. "This belonged to my daughter," he said quietly. Maya's eyes widened. "I didn't know you had a daughter." "Had." Bear's voice was rough. "She died when she was 12. Drunk driver. Nothing I could do." Maya's hand found his. "I'm sorry." "It was a long time ago." Bear turned the bracelet over in his hands. "I've carried this ever since. Couldn't let go. Couldn't move on." He looked at Maya. "But I think she'd want you to have it now." He fastened the bracelet around Maya's wrist. "This is our symbol. Our colors. When you wear this, you remember that you've got people who love you. People who will always come when you call. No matter where you are. No matter how far. You're family now, Maya. And family is forever." Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks. "I don't want to say goodbye." "Then don't." Bear smiled. "Say see you later. Because you will, I promise." Maya threw her arms around him one last time. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything. For stopping. For believing me. For fighting for me." Bear held her tight, memorizing the moment, knowing he would carry it with him for the rest of his life. "You're the bravest person I've ever met, Maya. Don't ever let anyone tell you different." They rode to the meeting point together. All 6 bikes, Maya on the back of Bear's Harley, arms wrapped around his waist, the leather bracelet warm against her skin. Rodriguez was waiting with the Foster family. A middle-aged couple with kind eyes and nervous smiles. They looked decent. They looked like people who would take care of her. Bear hoped so. He prayed so. Maya climbed off the bike slowly. She hugged each of the bikers in turn. Tank, Stone, Rust, Ruckus, Ace. Each man held her like she was made of glass and steel at the same time. Then she came back to Bear. "Remember," he said, "whenever you hear motorcycles, I'll think of you," Maya finished. "I'll think of my family." She hugged him one final time. Then she walked toward her new life, the bracelet on her wrist catching the sunlight. She didn't look back. Bear watched until she disappeared into the Foster family's car, until the car pulled away, until it vanished around the bend. Then he mounted his bike. "Let's ride," he said. The engines roared. 6 motorcycles pulled onto the highway heading toward the horizon. Behind them, a little girl began her journey toward healing. And somewhere in the rumble of those engines, in the thunder of that brotherhood, a promise echoed. "We'll always come when you call. Always." 3 weeks passed like slow thunder. Bear tried to go back to normal. They all did. The rides, the meetings, the long stretches of highway that used to feel like freedom. But something was different now. Something had shifted inside each of them, and no amount of wind or asphalt could shake it loose. Bear caught himself thinking about Maya at odd moments. When he passed a school bus, when he saw a little girl holding her father's hand at a gas station, when the silence got too heavy and his mind wandered to places he couldn't control. He wondered if she was eating enough, if her nightmares had stopped, if the Foster family was treating her right. He wondered if she still wore the bracelet. Tank noticed the change first. "You're quieter than usual," he said one night at the clubhouse. "And that's saying something." Bear shrugged. "Just thinking?" "About the kid. Yeah." Tank nodded slowly. He didn't push. That wasn't his way. But Bear could see it in his eyes, the same heaviness, the same unanswered questions. They all felt it. Stone, who never talked about feelings, had started volunteering at a youth center 3 towns over. He said it was to blow off steam. Nobody believed him. Ruckus had gone quiet too. The young hothead who used to pick fights for fun now spent his evenings reading books about child psychology. He denied it when anyone asked. The stack of books in his saddlebag said otherwise. Even Ace the Joker had lost some of his edge. His laughs came slower. His jokes fell flat. Something in him had cracked open, and he didn't know how to close it. Maya had changed them. All of them, in ways they were still trying to understand. Then the letter arrived. Rust found it in the clubhouse mailbox on a Tuesday morning. A pale blue envelope decorated with hand-drawn flowers around the edges. Purple ink spelling out "Bear and Everyone" in careful, wobbly letters. He didn't open it. He walked straight to the meeting hall, where the others were gathered, and placed it on the table without a word. Everyone stared. "Is that—" Ruckus started. "Yeah," Rust said. "It's from her." Bear's hands trembled as he reached for the envelope. He hadn't trembled in 30 years. Not during fights, not during close calls, not during the worst moments of his life. But this small piece of paper with flowers drawn by a child's hand. This undid him. He opened it carefully like it might crumble to dust if he moved too fast. Inside was a letter and a drawing. Bear unfolded the letter first. Maya's handwriting was small and uneven, full of the careful concentration of a child trying to get every word right. He read it aloud. "Dear Bear and everyone, I hope you're all doing good. I'm doing good too. I wanted to write sooner, but I didn't know what to say. There's so much I want to tell you." Bear's voice caught. He cleared his throat and continued. "The Foster family is really nice. Their names are David and Sarah. They have a dog named Cooper who sleeps on my feet every night. At first I was scared to sleep because of the nightmares, but Cooper helps. He knows when I'm having a bad dream, and he licks my face until I wake up. Sarah says he's my guardian angel. I think she's right." Tank turned away, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "I'm doing good in school. My teacher, Mrs. Patterson, says I'm one of the smartest kids in class. We had to write a story last week about the bravest person we know. I wrote about you. All of you. Mrs. Patterson said it was the best story she'd ever read. She cried when she finished it. I told her it wasn't a story. It was real. She hugged me and said I was very lucky to have people like you in my life." Stone's jaw tightened. His eyes glistened, but he refused to blink. "David and Sarah are teaching me how to garden. We planted tomatoes and peppers and sunflowers. I named one of the sunflowers Bear because it's the tallest one, and it stands in front of all the others like it's protecting them. Sarah laughed when I told her that. She said it was perfect." Ruckus made a sound, half laugh, half sob. Ace put a hand on his shoulder. "I still have the bracelet. I wear it every day. Sometimes kids at school ask about it, and I tell them it's from my family, my real family. They don't understand, but that's okay. I understand. And that's what matters." Bear had to stop. His voice wouldn't cooperate anymore. Rust took the letter gently from his hands and continued reading. "I wanted to say thank you, not just for saving me that day, but for everything after. For fighting for me, for protecting me, for making me feel like I mattered. Nobody ever did that before. Not since Mama died. I forgot what it felt like to be safe. You reminded me." The room was silent, except for the sound of grown men trying not to cry. Sometimes at night I hear motorcycles on the road near our house, and every time I run to the window and look, I know it's probably not you, but I pretend it is. I pretend you're checking on me, making sure I'm okay. It helps me sleep." Rust's voice broke. He handed the letter to Ace. Ace wiped his eyes and kept reading. "Detective Rodriguez came to visit last week. He told me that all the bad men are in jail now. He said Rick is going to be locked up for a very long time. He said I don't have to be scared anymore. And you know what I'm not? I'm not scared anymore. Because I know that even if something bad happens, even if the whole world turns dark, there are people out there who will come for me. People who won't ride past. People who will stop. Ace's hands shook. I drew a picture for you. It's all of us together. I'm not very good at drawing, but I tried my best. I hope you like it. Bear unfolded the drawing. His heart stopped. It was done in colored pencils and crayons, bright and messy, in the way only a child's art could be. 7 figures stood in a protective circle around a smaller one. Each biker had been drawn with careful attention. One with a huge beard. One with a shaved head. One with spiky hair. One with a bandana. One with tattoos covering his arms. One with gray in his beard. And in the center, a little black girl with braided hair holding a sunflower smiling. At the bottom, in purple crayon, Maya had written, "My guardians, my family, forever." Nobody spoke. Nobody could. Bear stared at the drawing for what felt like hours. His vision blurred. Tears he'd been holding back for 30 years finally broke through. He cried. Not the quiet, dignified tears of a man in control. Real tears. The kind that shook your whole body. The kind that came from somewhere so deep you forgot it existed. The others gathered around him. Tank put a hand on his shoulder. Stone stood close, offering silent support. Ruckus, Ace, and Rust formed a circle the same way they'd circled around Maya that day on the highway. Brotherhood. Family. When Bear finally spoke, his voice was raw. "We have to frame this." "Damn right we do," Tank said. They found a frame that same day. A simple wooden one with glass, the kind they used for photos from rides and memories worth keeping. They hung Maya's drawing on the wall of the clubhouse, right next to the club's emblem. The most sacred spot in the whole building. Beside it, they pinned her letter in a protective sleeve. Bear stood back and looked at it for a long time. "She changed us," he said quietly. "This kid, this 10-year-old girl who had every reason to give up. She changed everything." "Yeah," Tank agreed. "She did. We can't go back to the way things were. I don't want to." Stone nodded slowly. "Neither do I." "So what do we do?" Ruckus asked. Bear turned to face them. His eyes were red but clear. His voice was steady. "We do more. We find other kids like Maya, kids who are scared, kids who are being hurt, kids who need someone to stop for them." He looked at each of them in turn. "We become what she sees in us. We become her guardians. Not just for her. For all of them." The words hung in the air. Then Tank smiled. "I'm in." "Me too," Stone said. "Count me in," Ruckus added. "Same," Ace said. "Always," Rust finished. Bear nodded. From that day forward, the Hells Angels chapter took on a new mission. They partnered with Rodriguez, sharing information about potential trafficking victims. They worked with social services, offering protection for kids in dangerous situations. They showed up at schools, at community centers, at anywhere a child might need to see that help existed. Word spread. The bikers who saved a little girl. The outlaws who became guardians. The men society had labeled dangerous, who turned out to be the safest people in the world for children who had nowhere else to turn. People who used to cross the street to avoid them now stopped to say thank you. Parents who used to pull their kids closer when they walked by now waved and smiled. The club had been transformed. All because one little girl ran out of the woods and asked for help. 6 months later, Bear got another letter. This one was different, typed on official letterhead, from the foster care agency. He opened it with steady hands, expecting routine correspondence. What he found made him drop into a chair. Dear Mr. Harrison, we are writing to inform you that Maya Johnson's foster placement has been finalized. David and Sarah Mitchell have officially adopted Maya as their daughter. At Maya's request, we are reaching out to notify you of this development and to extend an invitation. Bear's eyes raced across the page. Maya has asked that you and your fellow club members attend her adoption celebration scheduled for Saturday, March 15th at 2 p.m. She has specifically stated that the ceremony would not be complete without the presence of her, quote, real family. We understand this is an unusual request, but given the circumstances of Maya's rescue and your ongoing support of our organization's mission, we felt it appropriate to honor her wishes. Bear read the letter 3 times to make sure he wasn't dreaming. Then he called the others. They arrived at the courthouse on March 15th, wearing their cleanest vests, their boots polished, their beards trimmed. 6 massive bikers walking into a family courtroom like they belonged there. Because they did. Maya saw them the moment they entered. Her face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. Bear! She sprinted across the room and launched herself into his arms. He caught her easily, lifting her up, holding her close. You came, she whispered. You actually came. Wouldn't have missed it for the world, kid. She pulled back, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. The biggest smile Bear had ever seen. I'm getting adopted today. For real. Forever. I know. I'm so proud of you, Maya. So damn proud. David and Sarah approached, their eyes warm with gratitude. Thank you for coming, Sarah said. It means everything to her, to all of us. Thank you for taking care of her, Bear replied, for giving her what she deserves. David extended his hand. Bear shook it firmly. She talks about you all the time, David said. The bikers who saved her life. The family who chose her when no one else would. Bear's throat tightened. She saved us too, he said quietly. More than she'll ever know. The ceremony was brief, but beautiful. The judge, an older woman with kind eyes, read through the paperwork and asked the required questions. David and Sarah answered with obvious love. Maya stood between them, holding both their hands, wearing the leather bracelet on her wrist. When the judge asked if Maya had anything to say, she stepped forward. I used to think family was just the people you were born with, she said, her voice clear and strong. But I learned that's not true. Family is the people who choose you, the people who fight for you, the people who show up when everything falls apart. She turned to look at the bikers standing in the back of the courtroom. Those men saved my life. They didn't have to. They could have ridden past. But they stopped. They listened. They believed me when I told them I was in danger. Her eyes met Bear's. They became my family that day. And now I'm getting another family. David and Sarah. 2 families who love me. I'm the luckiest girl in the world. The judge wiped her eyes. Well, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I think I've heard everything I need to hear. By the power vested in me by the state, I hereby declare this adoption final and binding. Maya, you are now officially Maya Mitchell. Maya threw her arms around David and Sarah. They held her tight, tears flowing freely. Then she ran to Bear. He knelt down to meet her, and she hugged him with all the strength in her small body. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, for giving me a chance to have this. Bear held her close. You did this, Maya. You survived. You fought. You found the courage to ask for help. All we did was answer. She pulled back, looking at him with those same eyes that had been so wild with fear the first time he saw her. But now they were different, calm, safe, happy. "Will you still come visit?" she asked. "Even though I have a new family, every chance we get," Bear promised. "You're still our people, Maya. That never changes, that never ends." Maya smiled. "I know." She touched the bracelet on her wrist. "I'll wear this forever, so I never forget." The celebration continued outside the courthouse. Pictures were taken. Hugs were exchanged. For one perfect afternoon, bikers and social workers and foster parents and one very special little girl came together as something bigger than any of them. Family. As the sun began to set, Bear walked Maya to her parents' car. She climbed into the back seat, buckled her seatbelt, and rolled down the window. "Bear." "Yeah, kid. Whenever I hear motorcycles, I'm going to smile. Every single time. For the rest of my life." Bear's eyes burned. "And whenever I see a sunflower, I'm going to think of you. Every single time. For the rest of my life." Maya grinned. "Deal." The car pulled away. Maya waved through the back window until they rounded the corner and disappeared. Bear stood there for a long moment watching the empty road. Then he turned and walked back to his brothers. "Let's ride," he said. The engines roared to life. 6 motorcycles pulled onto the highway, heading toward the setting sun. Behind them, a little girl smiled in the back of her family's car, touching the leather bracelet on her wrist. Ahead of them, the open road stretched toward tomorrow. And somewhere in between, in the space where broken things become whole again, a truth echoed louder than any engine. Sometimes heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather and ride Harleys. Sometimes they're the people the world told you to fear. And sometimes saving one life can change everything. Bear never forgot Maya. Maya never forgot Bear. And every time she heard the thunder of motorcycles on the road, she smiled. Because she knew. She knew that somewhere out there her guardians were riding, watching over her, protecting her, loving her, forever. Not all angels have wings. Some have leather vests and loud engines, and some children are saved not by miracles, but by the simple act of someone choosing to stop, to listen, to believe, to fight. That is the truest kind of love. That is the strongest kind of family, and that is a story worth telling, forever.